There we go. Okay. So thank you folks for coming to office hours this week. So I had two ideas for something to talk about. Either talking about how we write documentation for the Athens site, or talking about how we do the local development environment. So like for you, if you're contributing to Athens, how you would set up all of your local stuff, and like get set up so you can run tests and all that stuff. So I'm leaning towards the documentation side because I've been doing a little bit of that recently and it's fresh in my mind. But do either of you have a preference, or you want to talk about something completely different? Or are docs all good?
I'm cool with that.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah, and Banner, I saw your chat too. So all right, let's do docs. I'm going to share my screen. Cool. Can people see my VS Code here? All good?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so docs are conveniently located in the docs folder, which is fairly easy to remember, I hope. So all of what's in this folder powers docs.gomods.io. So like everything you see here is built in that folder, and it uses the Hugo static site generator. So this is a popular static site generation system. It's written in Go by Steve Francia. And it has sort of like a standard layout of of markdown files and HTML files. So we use a theme called, what is it? I think it's Hugo theme tech doc, if I remember correctly. So basically a theme in Hugo, if you haven't seen it before, is a Git submodule. You grab the Git submodule and you go into your Hugo standard config file, config.toml, at the top of the docs directory. And basically, we just set it to the theme, Hugo theme learn. Oh yeah, so I was mistaken. It's Hugo theme learn, not Hugo theme tech doc. So you set it to that. There's a couple other things you do in here, but really there's not a ton. It's like language support because we have a little bit of translations. I think somehow we allow for RSS and JSON output, although I haven't even played with that ever. So yeah, I mean, this is like the top level of the docs. I have literally never touched this except for like the first website for Athens ever. So I doubt you will have to touch it if you make any kind of like contributions to docs that just involve like writing some new thing. So that is everything under themes and the config file. The primary place that you would be writing stuff and contributing to docs is under content. So under content, there is the index file is the front page. So like index.es is Spanish, index.zh is Chinese, and then index.md is English. So this front page is markdown representation of docs.gomods.io. So like Athens is a server for your Go packages that shows up right there. So that's where you start. There's a little bit of markdown front matter here. This gets translated into some stuff in like the title tag and the HTML head of the rendered page. And then there's like specific sections: configuration, contributing, design, and install, and intro. And those just refer to here, intro, install, et cetera, et cetera. And then these files here, FAQ, tryout, and walkthrough.md, those reference these files here. So the folders are like sections. So if we click like installing, the sections have files below them. So that corresponds to all of these markdown files. And then the top level files, like the indexes and these three files here, those are down here: FAQ, try it out, walk through, that kind of stuff. So I actually have some real work that I want to do. Um, and it's about kind of describing the situations where you might want to use a vendor directory versus the situations where you might want to use Athens or some other dependency, Go module dependency proxy. So someone actually asked for this. If I scroll up, um, the so the discussion kind of ended here. I scroll up some more, and yeah, John, you were part of this conversation. So yeah, this person's name is Fraser. So he asked about, or he started a discussion about like why did his team go for vendoring instead of a proxy. So I offered we can help sort of convince his team. He gave some reasons why they waited and they stuck with vendoring, and then the conversation kind of went on and on. I chimed in a little bit about some of the benefits, and then John, you chimed in some more. So what I kind of wanted to do is basically take all of what's in here and put it into a document that's going to live on docs.gomods.io. And I felt like doing it in this session would be kind of two birds with one stone, because this will show how you can contribute to documentation. So I won't write the entire document in this session because there's a lot and I don't even know what to write yet. But I'll write a little bit, and I'll primarily focus on like how to write the stuff, like what file to choose, and also like how to test out your new documentation locally. And I'll go through like submitting a PR for the documentation and seeing how to deal with all that. So that being said, first things first, I'm going to go into my Athens directory. So yeah, I'm under my source directory. Notice this is not in my Go path. I'm always happy that it's not in my Go path these days with modules. So you'll hear me squeal with delight about that quite a bit in the just forever, basically. So I'm in here. So I'm on master, so I'm gonna call this branch like explain vendor versus proxy. So my upstream remote is configured to github.com/gomods/Athens. My origin is pointed to my fork. So I always check out against upstream master. So just for reference, these are the two that I'm talking about. So I have the SSH remote, so I can actually push to my my fork, which is under github.com/r/Athens. And then I have the HTTPS URL, which is read only for the actual github/gomods/Athens. So that's my personal preference. I highly recommend you do something like this as well, so you can keep track of which is your fork and which is the Athens upstream. I don't remember why I have these as my remotes. I think I was testing out some other folks' changes. But yeah, so I've done that, and I also checked out a new branch against upstream, so it has all the changes of upstream. And once I make some changes, I am going to push this to my fork, to origin, and then I'll submit the pull request. So that all being said, I'm going to clear my screen out. Let's go into VS Code, and I'm going to try to decide like where to put this. I don't have any great ideas about like whether to create a new file or not. And then if I did create a new file, there's the endless question of like what to name it. So for now, I'm going to put it in FAQ as a new like subsection of FAQ. And I'll submit it as a PR with that. And I'll just ask folks like, what do you think? Should it be another file? What should it be named? All that stuff. So also, I don't really know where to put it, and that's totally cool too. So I am going to put it at the bottom. I'm just going to say like, why should I use a vendor directory? Let's call it when. When should I use a vendor directory? And when should I use Athens? So this is kind of a nitpicky thing. You see, like I messed around with the uppercase and lowercase stuff. I have no idea which one to use. So I kind of just go with my feeling. I sort of tried to copy like kind of what this looks like. It seems like, I don't know really. It seems like the sort of the names or the abbreviations are uppercase and the first letter is uppercase. So I violated that.
Yeah, as part of the Microsoft style guide, they have everything lowercase in their in their headers.
Well, that's embarrassing. I work for Microsoft. So yeah, so I'm going to keep it with that. First letter is uppercase. There's no acronyms or like shortened words in here, so there's no uppercase for that. And then I put this, it's a name or proper noun, going back to elementary school grammar there. So yeah, that's a nitpick, but you know, nice documentation it's nice to have it consistent. So we try. So I've got this section. I think it's a decent place to put it in the FAQ. Obviously it's a question that at least one person has asked. At GopherCon, I heard this question a few times in different sort of forms. Some people said why, literally. Other people said I am sticking with vendor. Other people said I hate vendor and I'm going with Athens. And there's a lot of sort of like confusion, like why should I do it, when should I do it, etc. So I'm not going to try to boil the ocean and solve this problem and answer everyone's questions here, but I'm going to basically start with everything in here. So basically I'm going to start here, copy this in, and then I'm going to go here, copy that in. And this is like the laziest documentation effort ever, but it's a good start. So I'm copying my thing in. Obviously, right here is how this whole PR started. He said a quick how to compare vendoring versus Go proxy / Athens section in the docs. That's what we're doing. So I'm going to copy your stuff, John. I'm shamelessly copying everything basically at this point. And it looks like there's, here's something from Leitzler. And that might be it. Yeah. All right, so that's it. So instead of trying to organize these thoughts at the moment, I'm going to skip to submitting the PR. So I'm going to submit the PR. I'm going to get it up and like ready for people to review, but I'll show a specific way to make it so that people aren't going to come review and be like, your grammar's terrible. Like, what is this? I don't even understand it. It looks like you just copied a bunch of stuff from Slack. I'll submit it in a way that it indicates like, hey, I'm not really ready for that level of review. But first, let's look at how the docs will look locally. So we can kind of like, do like sort of local testing. This is sort of the equivalent of like running unit tests, except it's for the docs. So I have downloaded the Hugo CLI. I have v0.5. And if you want to download the Hugo CLI, you just go to Quick Start at gohugo.io. So I have Homebrew. I'm on a Mac. I just did that. They have also installed documentations for binary. You can just download a binary. Linux. I didn't even know Homebrew was on Linux now. Linux Brew. That's cool. I'm way behind the times on Linux because I don't have another machine but this one. That'll change soon. But anyway, I digress. Windows, and then you can also literally just build it from source. And this being Go, it's pretty easy to build it from source. So I have just done the lazy way. I haven't built from source. I just did a Homebrew install. So now that I have it, Basically, I can go into the docs site. So I'm under Athens, and then the docs site under Athens. And then I can do Hugo server, clear the screen. And this literally just does a full build from all the markdown, renders all of it in HTML on the fly, and then runs a local server so I can see everything. And then also, I'll show this in a second, it'll automatically watch the relevant files for changes. And when I do a change, it'll automatically update the in-memory rendered version of the site. And then I believe that it'll automatically refresh the page, but I can't remember that part. It'd be pretty cool if it did, but I can't quite remember. But we're going to test it out. So localhost port 1313. I'm going to go here. My stuff should be in FAQ all the way at the bottom, and there is my word soup. So there's that. This is like a nice way to sort of remember what I did and see how it looks. So in this case, it looks terrible. Let's make a couple changes. I remember these were a bulleted list here, but in Markdown, they're not. So I'm going to make them into a bulleted list. And that was right here. So the Markdown version of a bulleted list is the dash. Put this on a new line. And yeah, so Hugo did the update in memory. You can see there it said serving pages from memory, running in fast render mode. And then down here it said change detected, rebuilding site. So when I pressed save, it detected the change by watching file changes. I guess it spit out the dates, the full date and timestamp of the change, which I don't need, but that's cool. And then it has this in-browser technology called live reload, which to my understanding is basically like a WebSocket that is connected to Hugo. So Hugo can talk down to the browser and say, hey, there's new stuff, reload the page. So it's handy. The TLDR is it's really handy to run Hugo server locally. And so that is sort of my documentation. It's not ready. So let's go and push it up to GitHub and show what it would look like to submit what's called a draft PR. And the draft PR is basically telling folks, hey, this is a work in progress. Don't review it like it's about to be merged yet. And there's a couple more cool things that we'll see. I'm not going to explain them because we're just going to see them in a second. So I'm going to exit out of my server. So when I do GS, this is an alias for git status. So GS shows what's going on. gcom, that's my alias for git commit. So I can just type a little less. So when you see those things, basically I'm going to do this. Adding a section for discussion on when to do vendor directories versus when to use Athens or another proxy server. Okay, so now I have my thing committed, and I'm going to do a git push. So notice here, I'm doing git push. I'm setting the upstream, and then I'm pushing to origin, which is my fork again, and I'm pushing this branch up to origin. So it's going to create a new branch on the origin. So we're doing that. It's almost done. Please be faster. Okay, so it's almost done. There is a CLI tool called Hub, which will automatically it will automatically create a new pull request from a branch that you've pushed up to your fork. So this is called Hub, and let me try to find the website for that. GitHub Hub CLI tool, maybe. Yeah. So this is the thing. It's github.com/github/hub. It does a lot of stuff, but really the main thing that I use is hub pull request. Maybe it's over here. Yeah. So this thing is going to open up my text editor of choice, which is going to be VS Code. I get to type in sort of my PR title and some description, and then it'll automatically hit the GitHub API, create my pull request on the upstream, so on github.com/gomods/Athens. And it does it all from the command line. And then I can go in and check out like the actual pull request on GitHub in my browser. So it usually saves me a lot of time. So I'm going to do that. We're going to go into here. This is not right at all. Where did this come from? So we're going to do one of these, adding a section on vendor versus proxy to the FAQ. And let's see here. This explains some pros and cons for when to use vendor and when to use a proxy server like Athens. So this is not going to be like totally complete. And you notice here, like there are these preset sections that I'm supposed to fill out. And this comes from Athens. Athens, we set up this thing called a pull request template. So this is like, it helps people structure their pull requests in a way that makes it easier for pull request reviewers to figure out sort of the context. Like what is the pull request trying to address? What should we be looking for? It makes it a little easier to start doing a review. That's for anyone who comes in and wants to do a review. So I am going to try to follow this template. So let's put this here for now. So what is the problem I'm trying to address? There have been a few questions over in the recent past about when and why to use a vendor directory instead of or along with. You guys like listening to me dictate what I'm typing at the same time? I'm really bad at it, but I'm going to write like just this, and I'll update it later in the pull request. Thank you. Thank you, Banner. I'm usually a terrible typist, but I got a mechanical keyboard that helps me a lot. So yeah. I added a section to the FAQ. Okay, so that's decently good. And I'm not really, oh, actually I might be fixing an issue. I think someone wrote down the issue. Yeah, here. So I'm fixing issue number, let me scroll a little bit. I'm fixing issue number 1338. So that's part of the template too. So I'm fixing 1338. And now when I close this file in VS Code, the hub CLI tool is actually going to take what I wrote here, and it's going to go and create the pull request with all of this stuff. Before I do that, we have this GitHub pull request hook called the WIP bot. So it looks for these three characters somewhere in the pull request title. And you'll see what it does. It basically fails a status check on the pull request to prevent it from being merged. So anytime this is in the pull request title, or I believe somewhere in the body, and it's got to be uppercase, all three letters have to be uppercase, the pull request will not be ready for merge. So what I'm going to do is set it to WIP. When I'm ready to merge this later on, like when I clean up all the text and make it make sense, I'll take it out of the title, and then the WIP bot will run again. It's just like a CI system, but it only looks for one thing. When it runs again, it will not find WIP, and then it will have the green check mark and say this PR is ready for merge.
Out of curiosity, how come you're just not using the draft pull requests?
Yeah, actually, it's just basically because I don't really know how they work. So maybe
Oh,
you can actually answer this. If I do a draft pull request, will the CI run?
well, yeah,
It
it
will?
should. Yeah, I think as far as I'm aware, the only thing that it prevents you from doing is merging until you explicitly say that like this is ready to go. It just puts it into an unmergeable status basically.
Okay. Well, let's try it. I'm going to just cancel out of this. Or actually, John, can I move an already submitted pull request into draft state? You know?
Move and already submitted. I don't see. It's just if you go to the pull request, there's just an option in the bottom right. So I don't know the answer to that, but I would be surprised if you couldn't, because my interpretation is, again, it's just a status thing.
Let's see.
So there should be or maybe you can't if you've already made it.
Let's start from scratch then. I'm going
You
to cancel
can't.
this. And I still have this open, so I'll copy it in. So he has it as a draft. Let's just go here and just the manual GitHub website draft thingy. I've seen this before, so draft, and then I'm going to copy this whole thing in. I'm going to keep the WIP section. The bot will still run, but obviously, like you said, John, it doesn't really matter because the draft is the draft. So I'm going to put this in there. And that is about it. Let's see what happens. So we've got our draft. Perfect. All right. So status checks are running. So all these things basically from here down to here are like CI stuff. So like this is checking the Helm charts. We talked about that last week. This is Windows builds, lint scripts. That one is basically doing like bash script testing, linting our bash scripts. Linux builds, and then the really cool one, oh, this is the WIP bot. This is going to fail. I still have WIP. And then the really good one, the cool one, is that you can actually get live previews under a separate domain of what the site's going to look like. This is like the live version of my local Hugo server, like a second check, maybe like an integration test. So we're going to check that out. And so you can see it's not at docs.gomods.io, but it's actually on the internet. So that's good. The internet is a thing. And then going down, this is my change. So I'm checking it out. It looks like it was local, so that's cool. But if you're writing docs, I totally always recommend that you submit the PR and then you check out what this looks like. And every time you do a new commit, if you want to check it out, it's always going to be updated. So Netlify is our hosting provider. It automatically does builds with Hugo, and it'll automatically update all the pull request previews too. So I love that feature. I can't say enough good things about Netlify in general, but this is like one of the killer things for me.
Yeah, actually, I actually was going to ask that. Would need to go Netlify over just using GitHub pages? But obviously, it sounds like they have more out of the box.
Yeah. So I actually don't really have a great answer for that. The thing that I really like about Netlify is it has like full, basically has everything out of the box. So I didn't have to configure much in the way of like a CNAME file or anything like that. But like on the other hand, it has a lot more configurability than GitHub Pages. So like this is the like Netlify config. So like here, this is like the specific stuff for how I want to run Hugo build. And then like I have redirects set up that like, you know, if you go to gomods.io, we have nothing there. So we want to redirect. And we have like the raw Netlify URL. We want to redirect to the real URL. So it's like a little bit more configurable. And also, honestly, like for Hugo, not Jekyll, but like for Hugo, I'm just more familiar with how Netlify works. I was at the time. So I don't have a great like technical reasoning. It's just that's what I was most familiar with.
Gotcha.
I'll show.
You might be able to put that either on blind, or you might be able to just put this in the same pull request. Was that a page that you had open for the Netlify config? Were those values the exact same? Those
These?
redirects, GOMODs. Oh no, one's HTTPS. Okay,
Yeah.
that's exactly the same.
And basically, like gomods.io, our grand plan at first was to have like a real Athens running on gomods.io. The reasons that we don't have that are long. Basically, I don't have time to be a full-time SRE. But that's another discussion. But we were going to have this be an actual Netlify, an actual Athens server, but we don't have it yet. So we're just redirecting to the docs site. And then like same thing here, like Netlify will give you a something.netlify.com URL, and we don't want people to see that. So we just redirect them. If someone, picks this up or sees it somewhere, we just want them to go to the real URL. And eventually, like we should upgrade the Hugo version because I was using 0.5 on the CLI. But yeah, basically you can set that. There's a bunch more stuff you can set, and they have a reference for the TOML config file. But really, this about does it for us. It's good enough for us. One feature actually that I will mention, like they have full support for Lambda functions in AWS, and they automatically like proxy and do the cores stuff. If you want to go from your static page, run some JavaScript and call dynamic code. But they also have a configurable proxy that you can set up in this file. So if you want to talk to your backend from like React or some JavaScript on your front end, you can talk to docs.gomods.io, and like you can set up specific paths or path globs to automatically redirect to some other host somewhere. And Netlify will take care of like, doing the proxying, like passing headers and dealing with caching and all that stuff. And I've used that once or twice, and it's been really handy. So it's got a little extra things like that are kind of cool. So yeah, this is Netlify. The builds, like it'll show the results of builds. It's got like logs and stuff like that. So really what you'll use most of the time are these deploy previews though. They're handy. So I have this. Oh, and I see what you mean, John. Ready for review. So when I'm done, I can do this. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll flip it back. If you click on that, I don't know if you can make it like back a draft, but okay. Yeah, that will make it so that you can actually merge it in.
Oh, cool. Okay. So yeah, this thing is supposed to fail. I guess it doesn't fail anymore. It's broken or something. Once I learn more about this, maybe we can take away the WIP bot. For now, we've had this the whole time. So I'm going to have to make some progress to figure out how this draft thing works.
I figured worst case, it was just like a relic of the past because draft they're relatively new-ish, so everyone was using all the whipbot stuff.
Yeah.
For that deployment preview that you had, is that something that you can actually have like comment on the pull request itself, or is it in detail? Because I know like that's something that I've always disliked about contributing to the Microsoft docs is they have the whole docfx build thing, and you have to set it up in your local, and it's like kind of a huge pain. And so when you submit a change, you can actually see what it will look like. But if you could have like a contributor who wanted to contribute to your docs and say, hey, like I have submitted your pull request, everything is green, like does this link look good? Or is that link that you showed only available to you?
So do you mean this link?
Yeah, you had a link that actually went to the staging environment, basically.
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah,
I'm
this
guessing
is
is the result
available
of your.
for anyone.
Okay, so if I make a pull request to your docs and I click on the details of Netlify, I can actually see like what it will look like.
Yeah, I'll prove it
Okay.
to you.
Yeah.
So a private window, check this out. I'm gonna go, oh, I need to be signed in, I guess. You go check it out, John. You can
I
verify.
will do just that. Because yeah, like, that alone would be pretty huge. Like I really wish the Microsoft documentation had that.
I will,
Oh yeah, yeah, details right there.
yeah. I
Uh,
actually didn't know you had to be signed in to see the status checks, but as long as you can see it,
huh.
you know, contributor will be signed in.
Yeah, that's pretty spiffy.
Yeah, I mean, this preview thing is easily the number one feature for me in Netlify.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and this is pull request 1340, and the link points to 1340. So I'm guessing even when like PRs get closed or something, it just goes away. Yeah,
Yep.
pretty nice.
I actually don't know. These actually might stick around for at least a while. Let's see.
Yeah, like go
1349.
dig up an old PR and see if it's just still chilling out there.
Yeah, I guess not. Maybe this, I don't know. Maybe they're deleted automatically or after some period of time. But yeah, I mean, while it's open, because then, like, usually what I do at least is, I'll review, but for docs, it's kind of like the equivalent of having to like go check out someone's branch and run it. But this time, like, I don't have to run it. And what I do instead for docs is I just go here and see how it's actually going to look.
Oh, so yeah, I mean that's huge. Again, it's like, and that's especially you really see the value when you start getting into documentation that links to external source code
Yes.
or has to do some sort of logic around it. Then you're like, does this actually compile or run? Like,
Yes.
I have to actually view it to approve it. And so yeah, you're
Yes.
stuck checking out the branch locally and building it.
100%. Like the Hugo, like that local thing I did, Hugo server. Sometimes I'm honestly just like lazy and I'm like, I'm not going to go run that. Even though it's so easy, I'm just not going to run it. And I'll just submit the PR and then have Netlify do it and look at it there.
Oh yeah, I don't. Yeah, if it has it right there, I don't think I would ever run it locally. I mean, that's what it's going to look like.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the only time I do it local is like if I'm on the plane or something, but otherwise, yeah, pretty much. So we've gone through kind of the whole, end-to-end writing documentation. Let's go back and we've got like 20 minutes. So let's go back and like kind of clean it up a little bit. I'll spend like maybe 5 to 10 minutes doing that, and obviously interrupt me if you have questions or anything, or catch me writing something stupid. But otherwise, like, honestly, this might be boring. So if folks want to talk about something else, please interrupt me. Otherwise, you're going to be watching me type. So, anyone have ideas on what I should write? Because I'm drawing a blank at this point.
Well, that's what I'm trying to think. Like I mean, for vendor, um, I mean, I guess maybe even to Marwan's point of there is value if like for some reason your CI/CD doesn't have access to any sort of like internal and you can't actually do a download because obviously if you're a vendor, it's already good to go. Um, I mean, there's speed concerns, but even then, they're just so minor compared to just doing a download anyway.
So let's see. Oops. So that was one of your points. When vendor is so small.
And I mean, at least in this question, it is specifically tied in the context of the individual or the company, like they have Athens, right? This isn't like when should I use the vendor directory versus when should I use modules.
You can, I mean, since you can still use modules with a vendor directory, I wanted to focus this more on like, even if I have a vendor directory, when should I go and start using Athens instead of like downloading, using modules, but downloading directly from source control?
Gotcha. Okay.
So like you were saying, when vendor is so small, it's still faster to check it out from your repo than it is to pull zip files from the server.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those, like, that's like a gimme of, well, there is a speed concern because obviously you don't have to download anything, but on the other hand, it's so negligible, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's probably a turning point where, since the zip files are smaller than what your vendor directory will be at some point. It's like the axes on the graph will cross, and zip file downloads will all of a sudden become faster than a git checkout of a vendor directory. But when you're on the left side of that inflection point, yeah, totally, like just check out the repository and vendor will be there. I suppose another option would be, if you're coming from like Glide or Dep or something, keep your vendor directory for now, because you don't like,
Yeah.
that's a bigger risk. Then CI/CD valuable. You have a new project. You want to or your let's see, or your system admin CTO your vendor checkout speeds are getting slower, are getting slow. I don't know what slow means yet, so I'll have to define that better later on. So they're getting slow, and downloading from Athens speeds the buildup. So something like that. I'll have to bring in some more points from here as well at some point in the future, but we'll make a little progress there. So yeah, that's about all I'll do in terms of writing more docs for now. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. That's all I really had in terms of docs today. Do folks have questions or want to see me do something more in this area? Thoughts?
No, there's nothing really to think of. Yeah, I was mostly curious on the Netlify portion of that. Yeah, that was the biggest one, because nobody normally just go the GitHub Pages route.
I think like probably like for a personal website or yeah, I don't know. It's I really think it's more of what you're familiar with. So if I was doing a Jekyll site, like a static website using Jekyll, I would easily go with GitHub Pages because I know how to do it with Jekyll. I just always did Netlify sites for Hugo projects, so I just like reached for that immediately. Oh yeah, yeah.
Again, this I'm already a convert, and just for the staging part.
Yeah, I mean that was a big thing for me, and I think that's actually another good point for a bigger open source project. And by bigger, I mean like more than 2 people or 3 people. Um, you're kind of more statistically almost guaranteed that not everyone is going to have the same Hugo setup or Jekyll setup or anything. So having that central build, just like you have a central CI/CD build, is really helpful to show like, regardless of what you have in your machine, this is what it will look like on the live site. So make sure that it works for the preview and not just, works on my machine type of thing. So yeah, check out Netlify. It's without sounding like their advocate. I reach for it. It's always free for open source. So like I said, unless it's Jekyll, because I just know Jekyll for GitHub Pages is good. I usually go with Netlify. And their builds are fast. I don't know if they're faster than GitHub, but I've never had any problems with slow builds. So yeah, that about does it for me. See you guys next week.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was just doing a double check on the doc site. The only other thing that I think would probably be really valuable, because when it comes to documentation sites, like one of my favorite things to see is the edit button on the page. I don't know. I imagine Hugo has some plugin, or it wouldn't be that hard to kind of like whip it up yourself, like throw it in the a footer tag. But essentially, like you click on design/communication. There's like just an edit button. It takes you right to the GitHub, opens a PR.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so like people like know exactly how to get to your backend source. I found that normally people are much more apt to contribute back when it's just like a button click versus like, oh hey, where actually is your repository?
That is a great point. Hey, do you mind putting in an issue for that?
Yeah.
And if you want, putting a PR, but at least the issue would be really helpful.
Yeah, I know I've done it on a few other doc sites, but I'm not sure what Hugo has for it. But I'd be surprised if they don't have some sort of implementation for it.
Yeah, they've got to have something.
I can go ahead and throw that up there as a suggestion.
Oh yeah, so Banner, do you mean testing next week? You want to talk about it next week? Okay. Yeah, let's do it. I'll make a note in the calendar. Do you guys know about the calendar?
I know it's...
Nope, it's not there. I'm going to try to... There we go. Team Up calendar. I usually post links to it in like the tweets I send out. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this, but I'll make a note at the top to say we're going to talk about testing and the CI pipeline that like we all remember, especially I remember, because otherwise I'll just forget and be like, we're going to talk about something, whatever, something on the top of my head. So we'll actually do that next week for sure. All right. See you all on the internet and next week, I hope.
We'll do.
See you there. Bye.
Yep.